My friends, have you ever wondered why some people seem to speak English so naturally? Not just fluently, but with confidence, as if the words are already waiting in their minds before they speak. It's not because they were born with it. It's because they trained their mind to think in English. Because English isn't just a language, it's a mindset. When we talk about fluency in English, most people immediately think about how fast someone can speak, or how accurately they use grammar. But the truth is, fluency doesn't begin with the mouth. It begins with the mind. Thinking in English is the first and most important step toward becoming truly fluent. When your thoughts start forming in English, you stop relying on your native language as a bridge. You begin to process ideas, emotions, and reactions in English, making your speaking more natural and automatic. This mental shift is what separates learners from speakers. In the early stages of learning, many people translate every sentence from their native language to English. This process is slow, frustrating, and full of hesitation. That's because the brain is trying to do two things at once: understand the idea in one language and convert it into another. It creates a delay in speaking and often results in errors or awkward phrasing. But when you train your brain to think directly in English, you skip the translation step entirely. Your thoughts and words start flowing from the same place. Becomes easier to respond in real time, with fewer pauses and more confidence. Training your brain to think in English doesn't happen overnight. It takes intentional practice, small steps, and daily exposure. Start with simple things. When you wake up, think good morning in your mind. When you eat, think I'm having breakfast. When you walk, observe your surroundings and label them in English. Tree, sky, car, bird. These small thoughts help your brain get comfortable using English as the default language for processing information. Internal dialogues are another powerful tool. Talk to yourself silently throughout the day. Plan your tasks in English. Ask yourself questions and answer them in English. For example, instead of saying, "Mujhe market jana hai," train your mind to say, "I need to go to the market." These micro moments rewire your brain and build a mental environment where English becomes the first response, not a second thought. Listening also plays a huge role in building mental fluency. The more you listen to English through podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube videos, or conversations, the more your brain gets used to the rhythm, structure, and sound of the language. Over time, your mind begins to predict sentence patterns, understand tone, and even anticipate vocabulary. This passive learning supports active thinking and gradually builds your ability to form thoughts without struggling for words. Reading helps too. When you read in English regularly, your brain becomes familiar with how ideas are structured, how sentences flow, and how words are used in different contexts. This exposure feeds your internal language system and strengthens your ability to think in full sentences instead of just isolated words. You begin to absorb the language, not just learn it. Of course, mistakes will happen as you practice thinking in English, but that's part of the process. Instead of getting frustrated, see mistakes as signs of growth. Each time you forget a word or phrase, your brain is being challenged to learn and remember. This struggle is where real learning happens. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about progress, consistency, and comfort in using the language without fear. Thinking in English also changes how you respond emotionally. You become more confident, more present, and less anxious when speaking. The fear of judgment starts to fade because you're no longer trying to mentally switch between languages. You begin to trust your instincts and speak more freely. That's when fluency truly starts to show. When the words come from your thoughts, not from translation. When you react naturally, without hesitation. Adopting the mindset of an English speaker is not about speaking with a perfect accent or using complex vocabulary. It's about seeing yourself as someone who belongs in the language, who owns it, who lives in it. When you start to think like an English speaker, everything changes. From the way you approach conversations to how you deal with mistakes. It's a mental shift that turns English from something you study into something you live. And that mindset is more powerful than any textbook, course, or grammar rule. Most learners approach English with a mindset of fear. They fear being wrong, fear being laughed at, fear not being understood. This mindset creates hesitation, and hesitation builds walls between the learner and the language. But English speakers don't speak perfectly all the time either. What they have is confidence, fluidity, and comfort with the language. That comfort comes from a mindset that welcomes imperfection and embraces communication over correctness. To adopt the mindset of an English speaker, you have to begin by changing how you see yourself. Don't call yourself a learner. Start calling yourself a speaker. Even if your vocabulary is limited or your grammar isn't perfect, own your progress. When you speak, speak like someone who belongs in the language. When you make a mistake, correct it without shame. When you hear a word you don't know, be curious instead of embarrassed. That is the mindset of someone who grows. English speakers think in English not because they memorize rules, but because they train themselves to be in the language all the time. They don't translate, they feel. They don't try to be perfect, they try to connect. That's what your mindset must become. The moment you stop waiting for permission to speak and start owning the language, you change the way your brain interacts with English. It becomes less of a foreign object and more of a natural space where your thoughts can live and grow. Building this mindset takes practice, and it starts with small actions. For example, stop overthinking before you speak. Just say it, even if it's wrong. The goal is not to be flawless. The goal is to be fluent in expressing your thoughts. Think of English as a tool for communication, not a subject you're being tested on. That's how native speakers use it. That's how you must learn to use it too. Surround yourself with English in ways that make you feel like you belong to it. Watch content that interests you. Listen to people who inspire you. Read things that spark your thoughts. And don't just consume, respond. React. Speak back. Write your own thoughts. This mindset of active engagement creates a bond between you and the language that no passive learning can match. Confidence grows when you stop seeing English as something outside of you. Make it a part of your identity. Say to yourself, I am someone who speaks English. Say it again and again until your brain starts to believe it. When English becomes part of who you are, you no longer approach it with fear. You embrace it with pride. Also, understand that mindset is not fixed. You can change it at any time. You can shift from doubt to belief, from hesitation to action, from confusion to clarity. Every time you choose to use English instead of staying silent, you reinforce the mindset of a speaker. And the more you practice this, the stronger that mindset becomes. This is what separates those who struggle from those who succeed. It's not talent, it's not age, it's not memory, it's mindset. The belief that English is not just a language you learn, but a language you live. So, if you truly want to speak English with confidence, stop treating it like a subject and start living it like a mindset. Shift your focus from perfection to progress, from translation to thinking, from fear to expression. Every word you speak, every mistake you make, every thought you form in English brings you closer to the person you want to become. You don't need to wait until you're fluent to feel like an English speaker. Start thinking like one, acting like one, and you'll become one. Because real fluency begins the moment you believe English isn't just a language, it's a mindset you choose to live by every single day.